What lengths would you go to keep a relationship alive? Did love ever make you feel crazy? So crazy you would abuse, torture, and murder your own child? The old adage, love is a drug, may ring true in this case. In this week's episode, we'll dive into the case of Candice Diaz, who, along with her boyfriend, Brad Fields, was found guilty of the murder of her 4-year-old daughter, Gabby Barrett. Warning that this crime involves harm to a child in horrific detail. Candice Diaz was born in 1994 in Kentucky to mother Royna Diaz. Unfortunately, a rough childhood awaited her. When she was just 4 years old, while staying with her grandmother, she suffered severe burns all over her body from a fire that broke out in the house. Her mother and grandmother were charged with second-degree criminal abuse and sent to jail. Candice had to have many surgeries from her injuries. Candice was placed in the custody of a family member, Cynthia Diaz, who filed for custody when Candice was 7, citing that her biological mother had provided no support and had almost no contact with Candice for close to 2 years. Candice's father, Timothy Mullins, was also incarcerated, which means he too was not really a part of his daughter's life. At one point, he filed a petition to fight for Candice's custody, but then let that drop. He never financially provided for his daughter either. This is the last of any reporting of any information on Candice's biological parents. By all accounts, Cynthia cared for and raised Candice in a safe, comfortable household. However, Candice's poor life choices would come to surface as an adult, eventually costing her the ultimate price. At some point in Candice's upbringing, Cynthia and Candice moved to Michigan from Kentucky. When she was 21, Candice and her then boyfriend, Kyle Barrett, had a baby. On July 3, 2013, Gabrielle Renee Barrett, known to family and friends as Gabby, was welcomed into this world. Their relationship didn't last though, and Kyle left when Gabby was around 4 months old. In early 2015, when Gabby was 18 months old, Candice started seeing a new guy, Brad Edward Fields, who was 4 years her senior. Around this time, Candice moved in with Brad to a trailer park in Belleville, Michigan. Gabby was left in Cynthia's care, who was said to be a good provider, like she had been for Candice. But when Gabby turned 4, Cynthia was unable to enroll her in school as she wasn't her legal guardian. So Gabby went to live with her mother and Brad in his trailer home. This seems to be where trouble began. In 2016, Candice called 911 after fleeing from the trailer, alleging that Brad had punched her in the face, shot the family dog, shot himself in the leg, and threatened to shoot her. When police arrived at the trailer, the conditions were abhorrent. Flies were everywhere, a stench from rotting food permeated the space, dirty dishes overflowed in the sink, and dog excrement was found in multiple spots in the house. There was blood all over the floor, and cops found, among other suspect and not child-friendly things, a taser, guns, paraphernalia throughout the home. Brad was arrested, but 3 days later, Candice went to the police station to ask for his charges to be dropped, saying he was schizophrenic and off his meds, and even took responsibility for the guns. Unfortunately, Brad was not charged with firing a gun, though multiple sources witnessed this as well, and he was released. At this time, through this violence, the kids were reported to still be staying with them, even though they were living in squalor. Brad and Candice had a baby named Zoe, who was apparently treated well. Sadly, this was not the case with Candice's older daughter, Gabby. Although she had been potty trained by 18 months, according to Cynthia, her previous guardian, she would sometimes have bathroom accidents, as 4-year-olds commonly do. This can also be a trauma response in young children. Sadly, this seemed to be the catalyst for much of Gabby's abuse. Being smacked in the face, forced into ice baths, given Adderall despite having negative side effects, being shanked with a fork, and forced to wear nothing but a trash bag and sleep on the cold floor were just some of the horrific treatments that Gabby went through at the hands of Brad and Candice. Much of this the couple documented on a Facebook group. At the end of 2017, the couple posted a Happy New Year announcement holding baby Zoe, blatantly leaving Gabby out of the family photo. On January 1st, 2018, Gabby was forced into a scalding bathtub where police documented finding melted human flesh in the drain. Gabby became unresponsive, and Candice called her adopted mother, Cynthia, instead of 911. Cynthia immediately made the 30-minute commute to the trailer, where she found Gabby unresponsive on the bathroom floor, with Brad doing CPR before Cynthia took over. When authorities got there, they rushed Gabby to St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, Ann Arbor, but she was pronounced dead there. Her cause of death was listed as septic shock and battered child syndrome, the manner being homicide. During the trial, Cynthia claimed there was no water in the bathroom and that no one at the home, including Gabby, appeared to be wet. According to Candice, Gabby loved taking baths, sometimes playing in the water for more than an hour, and would even sneak into the bathroom and draw her own bath. On this occasion, Candice said she had run a lukewarm bath for her daughter, then went to make pancakes, leaving Gabby unsupervised in the tub. When she came back into the bathroom, Gabby was unresponsive and face up in the water, submerged just to her nose before she pulled Gabby out of the tub before throwing up. However, when authorities arrived, in accordance with Cynthia's later testimony, no one was wet at all, except a little dampness in Gabby's hair. Candice's story didn't seem to check out though, as Gabby didn't have any pruning on her fingers. There were no signs of vomit in the bathroom or any water in Gabby's lungs when she was intubated in the ambulance. While Candice rode with Gabby in the ambulance, she and Brad texted damning messages that would later be discovered when their phones were confiscated. They both said they thought they were probably going to jail, and Candice told Brad to get rid of everything. The list of injuries Gabby's poor little body suffered were astounding. She had burn marks on her body that appeared to be in varying degrees of healing, as some were past the scabbing stage. She had lacerations and bruises all over her body, and the severe burns were on her legs from the knee down, on her buttocks, posterior to both elbows, according to a Michigan Department of Health and Human Services report. Another report stated that the little girl was so badly scalded, one of her big toes fell off her body. As mentioned earlier, Michigan State Police investigators found a large amount of melted skin in the bathtub drain, according to testimony in the case. Contusions in her scalp implied her hair had been forcibly ripped out in places. She also had lice. Her teeth were in varying stages of decay, and she was malnourished. There was also evidence that she had been suffocated. There were no signs of drowning, as was implied by Candice's initial statement. A warrant for Brad and Candice's arrest was released 2 days after Gabby's death, but in an implied sign of guilt, the couple had fled the state. They were found and arrested in Georgia, near the Florida border, a few days later. Brad said the whole thing was a misunderstanding, and they were heading back to Michigan to turn themselves in. During their arrests, Candice told state officials she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. Brad said he's been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, social anxiety, agoraphobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, after 2 competency examinations for Candice, one by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Center for Forensic Psychiatry, the other by a doctor retained by her attorney, David Cripps, she was deemed mentally able to stand trial. Candice also claimed she suffered trauma from her early years living with her biological mother. But Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Vonda Evans said, "While that is damaging, it's no excuse for becoming a predator." Judge Evans went on to say, "Your beautiful daughter, Gabby, was a sacrifice you gave that Brad to fulfill his sick and demonic sense of love and control. You and that monster systematically destroyed this beautiful child's spirit, body, but never her soul. You allowed him to put your child in a garbage bag when she wet herself to give her drink. Your response was, Brad beat her What crime could this precious child commit that would cause such severe punishment? None. You were more concerned about feeding Brad than your own child. She concluded by saying that in her 21 years on the bench, she had never seen that kind of abuse inflicted upon one's own child. Brad was charged with first-degree felony homicide, second-degree homicide, torture, and first-degree CA. His defense team argued that he was not involved with the abuse to Gabby, but his text messages to Candice proved otherwise. On October 9, 2018, Brad was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Candice was charged with all the same charges as Brad, but she took a plea deal to reduce her charges to just second-degree homicide and first-degree CA, and was sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison. The state of Michigan took custody of baby Zoe, and we can only hope that she's now in a peaceful, clean, happy home, being cared for by sane, loving people. Kyle, Gabby's father, was incarcerated until January 3rd, 2018, being released just 2 days after his daughter was killed. The last time he saw her, he got to give her a hug and tell her he loved her. Gabby's paternal grandfather, Gabby Barrett, said that Gabby was always a happy child, an angel, he called her. He said his family had no idea of the horrors she was suffering and would have taken her from the home in a heartbeat if he had. Sadly, this is another case of trauma causing trauma. How was this level of abuse able to go on, especially after authorities had been called and the living quarters found to be in such destitution? We don't have answers to these questions, but it does seem clear that this is another example of the system failing. There are no excuses to justify Gabrielle Renee Barrett's abuse and murder. The sadistic cruelty she was subjected to is unthinkable for any human, especially a child. But hopefully awareness gained through her story will protect children in similar situations moving forward. One can only hope. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks as always for tuning in, subscribing, sharing, and liking. I'm Brandy. Catch you next week for another installment of Killer Bites.